kids. Mission Sunday is coming up. Wow, there's a lot of things that go on with a Mission Sunday, isn't there? We have one at Memorial Road, and people come and they just get so excited about Mission Sunday. I hope you're excited about Mission Sunday. So much goes on behind the scenes. So much goes on behind the scenes to make that happen. You having a contribution, your goal is what, 160-some thousand? Do you think any missionary has heard of that? Of course they have. How do you decide who gets the money, etc.? So many behind-the-scenes things happen in mission work. Whenever we think of mission work, and I talk about Mission Sunday, most people are real excited about sending people out. And we put a lot of effort into that. Nancy and I, we met at Oklahoma Christian. We started dating. We went on a mission trip to Australia. After our junior years, we came back and we started talking, will we get married? Will we get married and go to Australia? Will we not get, you're trying to figure all that out. We decided we would get married. We decided we would move to Australia. That was kind of our goal when we got married. We were there 17 and a half years. What do you do when you finish what your goal was? What do you do then? So that was kind of tricky for us, kind of hard for us. And but that's one of the things with missions we don't kind of think about. We think about sending. Sometimes we don't think about bringing people back. Coming back for us was much harder than going. We were just over the top excited about going. Dale and Sheila were part of our mission team. Tony and Betty Kazee, Kyle's parents. Tony was my roommate at OC, still one of my best friends in the world. We talk frequently. And Charlie and Debbie Powell. We were all good friends. We were all excited about going, trying to plant a church, help bring people to Christ, help people that didn't have an opportunity to hear the gospel. We were really excited about that. Coming back, sometimes you don't have that same excitement. You probably don't have the same goal when you're coming back. Some people come back because churches say, we can't afford to support you anymore. We'd like you to be back in 2 months. What? Some people like us just say, we think it's time for us to transition. Some people have family tragedies and have to come back. We had a couple that was working in Honduras, and he had a heart condition. He came back for the checkup, and the doctor said, you're not going back. All their stuff is left in Honduras. You have to get people, just things happen. So we're going to talk tonight about third culture kids a little bit, and that is, missionaries. We decided to move to Australia. Did our kids decide that? No. Heidi was 3.5. Haley was 15 months old. And we had a son in Australia. Did they have any part of that decision? None at all. So as you're there as a 3.5-year-old and a 15-month-old, kids somehow ask me the question, did your kids have an Aussie accent? What do you think? The only people around that had American accents were Nancy and I, and they were with us at home, and then they stepped outside that door. G'day, how you going, love? Good on ya. Bob's your uncle. All that sort of stuff, that we didn't say. They said it kind of funny, and they had Aussie accents. Who are they? Are they American or are they Australian? You moved there 15 months. What do you know about America? Yeah, hardly anything. What did our son, who was born in Australia, know about America? Well, the only thing he knew is when we would come back, visit our families for a little bit, what does everybody do? Hey, let's go out and eat. Let's go to we never did get to do Disneyland. A lot of missionaries somehow get to work that in. That didn't work for us. We didn't ever find that sort of arrangement. But they get to do special things. We'd go, my parents would take us places. Nancy's dad did a little bit. Nancy's mom died when Nancy was 19, but her dad, he'd do a few special things with us. The church, everybody would be nice to us. I don't think I thought about for years how hard it probably was for our children growing up. And we would be here, and everybody'd say, "Oh, Ken Nancy, yay, Ken Nancy, you're teaching people about Jesus, yay." And then we go to Australia, and people say, "Oh, we just love, you've given up so much." And then some of them actually came over and met our family and stayed with them and saw. Most of our family was on route to Sayre, and we were in Australia, and Dale and Sheila were in Australia. And they would come back and they'd say, how did you move from that and come to Australia? But they would, yeah. So our kids hear all these people, yay, 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 and they see us every day. And as parents, you don't always do everything right, do you? As spouses, you don't always do everything right. It's kind of hard. It's hard for preachers' kids. It's hard for those who are in leadership. So anyway, our kids experienced all that. I think they enjoyed most of it. They liked a lot of it. But who are they? Their passports say American. What do their hearts say? First time we moved back here, and the Olympics were on. Who were they cheering for in swimming? The Aussies. Aussie, 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 oi, oi, oi. They were cheering, and Americans couldn't understand it. Some of them didn't like it, but that's who they were. So third culture kids is what our kids are called. Some people refer to it as missionary kids, but a lot of people refer to that now as third culture kid. So they have part American culture at home, Aussie culture. They kind of throw those together and have a funny, unique culture that is uniquely them. And again, if you've grown up in another culture, sometimes you don't know how to respond to certain things. And we're gonna go and look at a few things. So let's see that next slide if there's another slide. What is a TCK? So a TCK, third culture kid, has spent a significant part of his or her development years outside their parents' culture. A TCK frequently builds relationships to all of the cultures while not having full ownership in any. So they have a lot of the Aussie culture and they have some of the American culture, but Heidi was probably in first grade and they said, we need some volunteers to help with sport at school. Guys, Heidi's accent was pure Aussie through and through as a first grader. She had been there for three and a half years. I go down to help with sport. So one of the teachers said, Mr. Hartman, would you please take the children and go over there and do whatever I did with them, basketball or whatever. I go over there and I say, okay, kids, let's say. The kids all in unison turn to Heidi and say, Heidi, your dad's a Yank. They had no idea she wasn't Aussie. They had no idea. So a third culture kid, you got those things going. You're living in this culture, but you're also in this world. Although elements from each of these cultures may be assimilated into the life and experience, the sense of belonging is in relationship to others of similar background. So as was mentioned, we moved back from Australia in July of 2000. And one of our kids didn't transition very well at all. It was really hard. It still is hard. And we didn't know what to do. We had no idea. We didn't know ourselves what to do with ourselves. I'd been preaching for those last, Nancy and I were there for 8.5 years after the rest of our teammates had come back. I'd been preaching a lot, doing youth work, et cetera, et cetera. And I came back and the church said, would you be education minister? My kid said, Dad, they said, we want you in the office from 9 to 5. Any of you who know me, I'm not a 9 to 5 office guy, okay? I grew up on a farm. We're always out busy doing stuff, And I said, I don't know that I can do that. They said, that's what we want. I said, I really do better with people and out. And they said, we want you in the office 9 to 5. My kid said, Dad, that's going to kill you. Well, everybody has to do a transition. So I'm trying to transition. Our kids are trying to transition, figure out America. We're trying to get our kids in school. We don't even know how to do that in America because we've gone 17 and a half years. It wasn't like we did in Australia. How do you even get as the Aussies would say, do you have the phone on? Not what's your phone number, because a lot of people didn't even have the phone. We didn't know how to get the telephone on. It was just crazy for us. You think everybody should know? No, everybody doesn't know how to do that. They'd say, get, I don't know, a number 2 pencil, or is that what they ask you to get in school? We didn't know we didn't know any of that stuff. And our kids are looking to us to help them, and we don't know. It's crazy stuff. Let's see the next slide. TCKs can be missionary. Some are international military people, or some are just domestic military people that are kind of third culture kids. They move so much, they don't put their roots down anywhere. And we have quite a few that are military kids that have lived around the country, and they say, I don't know where I belong. And we say, maybe you belong in the TCK group. Come on in. And so they do. And then some are corporate business people that go and live overseas for 5-7 years or something, or living right here at home. Okay, the next one. Third culture kids, TCK, third culture adults. So Nancy and I would be third culture adults. We didn't grow up in another country, but we lived there so long, we have a lot of things that cause us a few challenges in how we live. Sociologist, a lady named Ruth Hill Useem back in the 50s, found what they considered a new people group, the third culture people. Ruth Van Reken, who my wife has been to quite a few of her seminars, David Pollock, they wrote this book. And most people kind of consider this the Bible on TCKs. So when we first started getting it, it was about half this size. And then they just kept finding more people that when they would give presentations, the person would say, I didn't live overseas, but that is, what you're talking about, that is me. I moved around so much, I don't have roots anywhere. I feel like what you're talking about, every bit of it applies to me. So we give this to every one of our TCKs that comes to OC to kind of help them in their transition. So we try to give them, at the bottom it says, give them language. How do you talk to other people? What do you say when they get back from another culture? I mean, some of the kids have been speaking Portuguese their whole life. They've been speaking Spanish their whole life, primarily. And they come back and now everything's in English. Our kids, the learning system was a lot different in Australia than it is. So you're trying to give them some language, not just speaking English, but how do you actually say things? I got a guy that came in last year from India. A man wrote me, he said, I see you're an Oklahoma Christian. This guy's coming in to study in India. Can you make him feel welcome? And so I've become friends with Nitish Katapali. Monday night was my birthday. And I was speaking at a devotional. After the devotional, Nitish was there. And he said to someone, it is Kent Sir's birthday. And I just barely heard him because he speaks kind of soft. But the guy heard him say, hey, everybody, it's Kent's birthday. It's Kent's birthday. Let's sing happy birthday. So I'd sing happy birthday. I said to Nitish, way to go, Nitish. Way to spill the beans. I said, do you know what that means? I do not know, sir. Well, you're trying to help him with the language. First time I sent him an email. Would you like to go with me? I'm going to go run some errands. He said, I would love to, sir. I go pick him up. I said, do you know what an errand is? I do not know, sir. So some are that way, and some are just, how do I speak? How do you date in this culture? If you come here as a teenager, young adult, how do you date in American culture? When in your culture that you grew up in, you learned how people date. And it ain't like it is here. I mean, all those things are just so different. So we're giving them language, validation, and resources like this, and just other TCKs. Mel helps with our group. Peter Carriaga helps with our group. When Nancy and I started the group, we started it 20 years ago, January. We've had hundreds and hundreds of TCKs from so many countries, we can't even keep track of them all. We didn't know what we were doing, guys, when we started. But it's a lot like a lot of ministry you do. You see a need and you say, we've got to do it. We had no funding. We had no education. We didn't know what we were doing. We just said, we need to do something. So we started getting the TCKs together, and they helped each other a lot. Nancy started going to a lot of seminars. I went to a few of those, but she really grabbed a hold of it, and learned language to speak and how to try to validate the experience the TCKs have had. So the next one there is cross-cultural kids and some domestic TCKs. So these listings are some people that fit now into the group of students that we work with. And again, not every child that is in this category would fit there. Children of immigrants, refugees on the bottom. We have some kids that have parents from different cultures. So one parent is from one culture, one parent is from another culture. First generation Americans, the kids said, I was confused my whole life growing up. Both of my parents spoke a different language, and neither one of them knew American culture. So who did I ask? I get in trouble at school. I come, my parents didn't know. So they have become part of the TCK group as well, and you can see some other listings there. Okay, let's go to the next one. Possible challenges. Our kids, Heidi, my oldest daughter, looks a bit like me, unfortunately for her. But she looks more like me. Haley looks more like Nancy. So when they're in a classroom, would anyone know they didn't grow up in America? They look like every other American kid. After a few years, they kind of have the American clothes. They're a hidden immigrant. They look like everyone else. So I'll tell you a quick story about Heidi, our oldest daughter, who's, I won't tell you her age anyway, but she came back. We brought her here. We spent one semester. That's when I had Mel in class. We stayed here one semester, hoping to kind of get her settled and go back to Australia. Well, it was such a bigger challenge than we could even imagine. Heidi she was in the middle of everything socially at school, at church. The youth groups in Sydney would say, they would call us and say, we're going to have a youth group meeting this night if your kids can come. If they can't, we'll change the night. That's how important our kids were in that group. She came back and kids were talking about Troy Aikman. You guys, Troy Aikman, Emmett Smith. She didn't know if they were politicians, musicians. She thought they were someone important, but she didn't know what. And almost every conversation, she was very smart. She's very socially connected in Australia. She didn't know what people were talking about here. So Jim Wilson, anybody have Jim Wilson in history at Oklahoma Christian? He was a bit of a funny guy, wasn't he? Well, at least he thought, no, he was kind of funny. So one day he's lecturing in American history. How many times has Heidi had American history in Australia? Yeah, no, she hadn't had it, has she? Didn't have American history. She had Aboriginal history, and she got #1 in the whole state in Aboriginal history, but it never had American history. So Jim Wilson is lecturing, he said, and when the South won the Civil War, what does Heidi write? The South won she didn't even know there was a Civil War. She didn't know there was a North and there was a South, and she didn't know who won. She wrote the South won the Civil War. On the exam, first exam, Jim Wilson gives all the American kids a freebie. Who won the Civil War, North or South? Heidi circles the South. He counts it wrong. She goes up as he's getting ready to lecture the next class period and says, Dr. Wilson, you counted one of my answers wrong, and I got it right. Well, which one was that, Miss Hartman? Well, the question on the Civil War, who won the North or South? I circled the South, and you counted it wrong. He looked at her like this, and he said, Heidi, everyone knows the North. Does everyone know that? If you've grown up in another culture, in another nation, and you haven't had American history, do you have any idea? No. And everybody doesn't know what our culture, what our 10-year-old kids know more than an adult who's lived overseas, And so, again, it's trying to help them learn the language, learn the culture. you're a hidden immigrant, and they think you're just an American kid until she would open her mouth, and then they would know there was a little funny accent thing going. Divided loyalty. Who do I cheer for? Aussies or Americans? Who do I go with there? And that is a tough one. Mel, you know what I'm talking about? I think Mel, when it comes to soccer, I know he's very American, very pro-American on soccer. Right, Mel? Who would have ever thought that? How long have you been out of Brazil, Mel? And he's still going for Brazil. Why is that? Why is he still cheering for them? What does his heart say? His heart says, that's where I grew up. I love that place. And that's one of the challenges TCKs have. Expectations, unresolved grief, and unresolved grief and loss. I mean, I think I have unresolved grief and loss. Can you tell a bit? I mean, it's just tough. It is tough. What do you grieve over? You grieve over my best friends. They're 7,000 miles away. I want to talk about this with my best friend. Pretty hard to. Now we can pick up the phone a little bit easier. Used to be $1.50 a minute to call America from Australia. Now it's easier. But you have a lot of grief and you feel loss. Some of it, and I think we've got another slide on that later. And then identity. Who am I? Who am I? So if you meet a TCK, you'll often say, where did you grow up? Do I tell them the whole thing? Or what do I say? Right, Mel? How many of our TCKs, they don't even know how to, how do you not answer that question? Because they don't know how to, what do I say? If I say I grew up in Brazil, how much of the story am I going to go into, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of challenges there. Next one, please. Hidden immigrant, again, you may look like everyone else. And so because of that, you may not receive help that you really need because they don't know, you're not understanding. There's a lot of confusion and a lot of frustration. Again, if you've learned in a different language, that's really hard. And how do I ask for help? Do people here ask for help or not? If you see something happening, what do you do about it? What's a big phrase in Australia, guys? If you're in school or just anywhere, don't dob in a mate. Anybody know what that means? Don't dob in a mate. Someone's doing the wrong thing, you do not tell on them if they're your friend. If the teacher comes in and says, somebody did that, who did it? In Australia, you do not tell. I think it goes all the way back to the convict days, which Australia was settled with European settlement with convicts. And the convicts would not tell on each other. They would all rather get beaten, each one, than have one of their mates get beaten by the prison guards on their own. I think that is carried on. So you come here. You see someone doing something wrong. What do you do with that? You know what you do in your culture you grew up in. What do I do in this culture? A lot of confusion, a lot of frustration on how I handle that. Okay, let's go to the next one there. Again, divided loyalty, we mentioned that. There's more we could say about that, but that's a biggie for our kids. So in our TCK Lounge, OC has given us a room, and we call it the TCK Lounge. We have flags from almost all the countries that our different third culture kids have grown up in. We have couches there. We have a place where they can make a cup of tea. Most countries drink a lot of tea. We have things on on Wednesday afternoon where they get together and they talk and they share. We make snacks and the TCKs guys do a lot of work themselves. Someone say, I'm really struggling with this. One of them that's been there a bit longer says, well, this is what I did when I was having challenges with that. Mel is there to help some. Peter Carriaga helps. My wife Nancy helps. I do a little bit. We all pitch together. But the good thing is now we have some of the older kids in the group that we didn't have when we first started it. And guys, here's a scary thing too. We'll have some parents who will come, bring their kids, I'm leaving my kids here with you. You take care of them and help them in their transition. I'm going back to the mission field. And parents are expecting us to help them have a good transition and deal with their problems. Some of them, as you would know, we help quite a bit. And the TCK group helps quite a bit. Some of them we can't break through to. I just saw some parents that we had their son in our group for 3 years. He couldn't make the transition. He couldn't do it. He even went back to the country he lived in for a year and then came back. He wanted to pretty badly. He couldn't do it. His sister came, and all of us said, she'll never make it. She did great. How do you figure that one out? I don't know. We just work with the kids. We love them. We try to help them. And some transition pretty well, and some don't. Divided loyalty is a hard one. Okay, next. Expectations. Again, when they come back to the States, if they've been here in furloughs and stuff, they're expecting everybody to have plenty of time for them. Take them to all their favorite places. And then when they move back, everybody says, okay, you're here now. Get in school and do your thing. And expectations kind of confuse them because they were thinking it's going to be something else. Our son, he really wanted to move back. And when we were here just a few weeks, he said, why did we move back? Well, it's too late then, isn't it? And it's really hard to kind of deal with some of those things. Let's see the next one there. Grief and loss are often big things. So we, let's see. We do the TCK group at OC. We've been doing for 20 years now. About 16 years ago, we started a camp. Nancy, my wife, came to me one day and she said, we're going to start a camp. I said, we are? She said, yes. I said, what do you want me to do? And she said, all you need to do is provide the money and do the cooking. I said, that's easy. Thank you. I'll do that. So we started the camp. We had about 12 or 15 kids that first year. We didn't know what we were doing. We just knew we needed to get them together. We've been doing it for 16 years now. First year, 13 to 18-year-olds. Do you know what they said to us at the end of camp the first year? My parents are a wreck. My parents are not doing well. Why don't you have something for them? So the second year, we had a camp for the parents from 1 o'clock till 5 in the afternoon. They said, that was nice, but we want the whole thing, okay? Now, for several years now, we've been doing a camp. And then the parents said, we'd like to come, but we have these kids that are 8, 9, and 10 years old. They don't know their grandparents well enough. They don't know anybody well enough for us to leave them with. Can you do something for them? Camp now is 5-year-old to 12-year-old. 13 to young adults have their own session, and parents have their session. We have 3 camps running at the same time at Oklahoma Christian, and some of you in your congregation have brought food to help us with that camp. Every meal is catered in by Churches of Christ in the Oklahoma City area. I cannot tell you what a blessing that is. A lot of times before a meal, I will say to the students, guys, before we pray for this meal, could I just remind you, people that you have never met love you enough that they have prepared this food just for you because they love you and what you have done. That is a real healing thing for those kids, to see people bringing in food and they don't even know me. It is really healing. But we do the camp. That's another thing we do. And during the session, we always have one day on grief and loss. What have you lost? You've lost, well, this is a poem. You've probably read it by now. I don't do very well getting through that poem. But when you leave the other country, it's just pretty hard. And our daughter Haley, in her last 2 years, we had an Aboriginal family that came to church. The mom was a heroin addict, had been a heroin addict for many years. The kids should send the kids to church. Sometimes I get at the church building 7 o'clock Saturday morning. We had to have the locks on the gates because we had to have put gates up because they broke out so many windows. We had padlocks on the gates. Wouldn't you love to come to a welcoming church building like that? That had gates and padlocks and everything. I went one Sunday. We had visitors with us from Oklahoma. We pulled in the driveway. I said, "You got to be kidding me." He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Look." He said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Someone has put a chain around the gate and padlocked it. We can't even get in the church building." Crazy. Well, anyway, our daughter, the government came to us and said, if these kids of Carrie, the heroin addict, do not get to school, we're going to take them away from her. Our daughter in 11th and 12th grade would get up in the morning, go to the addict's house, let herself in, feed the kids breakfast, dress them, and take them to school. How do you think it was for her leaving that? Two of the kids came to the airport with us. They had to be pried off of her. 3 months later, we got the message the kids had been taken away from the mom because no one would continue to go get them dressed in the morning. That's a bit of grief and loss. You're on a sporting team you've been on since you were a little kid. You're gone. And again, guys, I know people in this culture, we move. We have some of it may be a little more challenging when you are 5,000 miles away or 7,000 miles away. And again, not to say it's not hard for people here when they move and they've been in the same school, they've been in the same sporting team, they've had these friends. It's challenging either way. So let's go to the next slide. Some losses, loss to the past that was. We would get together, come back for Thanksgiving, and they'd be saying, "I remember last year when Uncle so-and-so did such and such. Wasn't that great?" Everybody's laughing, and they have that common memory. We don't have that memory. That was lost for us. Loss of the past that wasn't. Loss of status. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. That's something that a lot of kids really, really struggle with. Missionaries struggle with. So one of the things we do in transition, we encourage missionaries to build a raft, and we say, here's some things that may help you. Reconcile with people before you go. Reconcile with people, build your raft. Affirm people. Remember the Apostle Paul, what did he say to Timothy and Titus? What did he call them? Timothy and Titus, my true sons in the faith. Do you think that was affirming? Affirm people that have helped you. Say farewell in culturally appropriate ways. You're living in a village, people may run around and catch chickens, kill the chickens, you eat them. What is culturally appropriate? You may be there for all day. Farewell to people, places, sometimes pets, and sometimes possessions. You know how much it costs to bring everything back? It's really pretty expensive. And that's what we learned that's in this book. I added a fifth one that to me was even more difficult, and that was position. You kind of have a position. I preached for years. I was made the president of the PTA, a Yank president of the PTA in Australia. How do you do that? It's only because our daughters were so loved and accepted. And they leave that and come here where very few people know them, who know what they've done. So it can be kind of challenging. Loss of lifestyle. Wow, our kids talk about the lifestyles they had in other countries. I went to school barefoot every day. We'd run down to the beach after school. Lifestyle, loss of possessions and loss of knowing. You know how to function in that culture because you've been there. You get to this culture, how do I function here? I still, guys, we've been back 20 years, I still, when I'm in a big hurry, go around to the wrong side of the car to get in to go. Because for so many years, I knew which side. And so it's just crazy stuff happens. What's next? Identity. I am a confusion of cultures. Uniquely me. I think this is good. I can understand the traveler, the sojourner, the foreigner, the homesickness that comes. I think this is also bad because I cannot be understood by the person who is sown and grown in one place. They do not know the real meaning of homesickness that hits me now and then. I am an island, a United Nations. Who can recognize either me but God? And again, some people feel that have lived here in this culture. But it's hard sometimes to be known and understood. Next, common ways TCKs deal with identity. Chameleon, they blend in with everything. Some people are wildflower. You're never going to see me. You're never going to see me. We had some friends, they came back, and the first 2 weeks, their son decided he was going to lose his accent, his South African accent, and it was going to be Texan from then on. They were really disappointed in that. But he said, I don't want anyone else to come up to me and say, why don't you speak right? I can't understand you. So he just, boom, Texan. Screamer. His 2 siblings were screamers. They did not lose their accent. They held on to it as tightly as they could, and they still do. They did not change the clothes they were wearing. One of the boys still goes barefoot almost all year. He's screaming out what? I'm not from here. I'm from somewhere else. All of those things can work. All of those things can work, and all of them can be a bit challenging. So let's see this next one, and then we'll... if you're in the life of a TCK, you can make a difference. And let's hit the next one there. You can make a difference. Next one, you can be a loyal friend. You can be a mentor. You can be patient with them. You can be forgiving, understanding, interested. You can listen, ask and listen. And you can be informed as to some of the things that they're going through. So you have someone that's a TCK, that's some things that will help them. What questions do you have for me? At camp, we had about 135 people from, 42 different countries. They'd lived in 42 different countries. Our biggest group is the teen young adult. We didn't have as many little kids as many adults this year, but we had a huge group of teens and young adults. That's always our biggest group. Some of those teens and young adults come several years in a row. We were at a dinner the other night with some who had organized camp, thinking about next year, already a year out, trying to get started. And one of the ladies who's now a certified counselor, she came to camp after she got back from the country she had lived in, the Philippines. She said at the meeting the other night, I'm not exaggerating, camp saved my life and my brother's life. Yeah, I'm not exaggerating. It saved our lives. We had a family come one year with 3 boys. They had left Africa, and as they were leaving, they had all their possessions in a big crate. It caught fire and burned with all their pictures, their personal belongings, everything that they had that they really valued. They came back. The people didn't welcome them. They didn't feel welcomed, I'll say that. People try, and guys, try your best. And we tell our TCKs, accept that people are trying. Accept that. It may not be what you want, but accept that and appreciate it. But they didn't feel that. They came to camp. The parents get out and walk out. The 3 boys stay in the vehicle. The parents come in and says, this the camp? Yeah, we got 3 boys who are out in the car. We don't think we can get them out. So we went out there. We finally coaxed them out, and they stayed for the week. They came back the next year. I was standing at the door, looked out. The back doors flew open. The three boys came racing in. They came the third year, and I was in a session with the lady, a sharing session, and she said, I must tell all of you, and she said, I'm not exaggerating, camp has saved our marriage. It saved our faith. It saved our family, and probably saved one or two of our lives. So again, you do what you can with everyone, don't you? You get some tools to say what will help people the best. And camp has been really a good resource for a lot of people. So again, making the best out of a bad situation. It was a bad situation for us when we came back. We didn't know anyone to talk to, anywhere to go. Churches of Christ, I even hate to say this because we're involved in it, but camp is groundbreaking in Churches of Christ. We had nothing else like that in Churches of Christ. And my wife had the foresight and vision to see that and say, we've got to do better. And so it's been a blessing to a lot of people. Yeah. We have to help people wherever they are. And we encourage some missionary families, if you've got like 5 kids, you've been there for a while, you may want to consider, a lot of people saying transitioning between 13 and 18 is not good. So there's a couple that moved back from another country when their daughter was turning 13 to get her back and try to, because they had 4 other younger kids. And they said, we don't think we want to be here for 10 more years. So that's one of the things we do. And some people it works fine. I mean, some of our TCKs come back and they're college age and they've got a sibling who's 16. They both do great. But that's not the normal. The normal is it's really, really hard, challenging, and difficult. So I think we still need to be sending people to teach the gospel. And I think we need to really pay attention on how we do that and how we bring them back. One man said, I think it may be in this book, it's the easy thing when you're doing a rocket up in space. The easier thing is shooting it into space. The harder thing is bringing it back home safely. We send people off with a lot of excitement, and sometimes when we bring them back, for the family and for people who've sent, there's not the same excitement. That's understandable. But we have to do a good job and get them into resources and tools that will help them in the transition. Obviously, God is the best resource. And this is embarrassing for me to say, but probably 50% of our TCKs who grew up in the mission field do not go to church here in America. That's a high number, isn't it? Mel, it may be higher than that, but it's pretty close to that, wouldn't you say? It's a high number. It's so hard for them. They say church where I was family. Here, it feels more corporate. And again, that depends on where you go, depends on the family, depends on the situation. But there's just a lot of challenging things. So I'm glad people like your church helps us with the camp and other things. I'm glad that we have a bunch of people who are working on this. If you hear of someone transitioning back, let us know. We'll do what we can to help them. We're not the only people that help, but we're happy to do whatever we can to help. It looks like it's past time. I'm sorry, I don't like going over time. So let's pray together. And then if you have any other questions, I'll be happy to stay around and chat with you for a while. My wife, Nancy, she's doing the women, and she certainly will be standing around chatting with people afterwards. So we'll be safe there. Let's pray. Lord, I pray your blessings on us, and I pray that you will help us to be mindful of all the aspects of missions. We know that you want everyone to be saved and to come to knowledge of the truth. And we know that we need to keep sending people to places where no one has heard of Jesus or where there are people that are not teaching the true gospel about Jesus Christ. And we pray that we'll continue to send, we'll continue to go, and we'll continue to take care of those who go and those who return. Lord, I'm thankful for the good heart this congregation has, the love they have for you, the love they have for lost souls, and the love they have for their missionaries. And I pray you'll continue to bless them as they reach out to this community and to the world with your good news. I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen.